Wisdom. It sucks sometimes. Now, this was a title given to me just within the last 10 to 15 minutes. And it's really about the nature of how I am in my heart with my soul, where some would think that the idea that our souls are all about prayers and visions of love that keep us afloat, right? How many of us feel like we're just staying afloat in this world rather than those who are flying high and free in their minds, caretaking the souls of many others and assuming that all is well on the soul level? It can be like that, but it's also very unique sometimes for some of us who are playing the field is where others are. So this is that idea that many who are in the vision of I love who I am as soul are always going to feel that way, or are always going to feel uplifted and joyful and exuberant in the ways in which they express. And the reality is not always. And it's very much of the idea that my compassion can sometimes override my own enjoyment is where I often go. And this is where we talk to people about the nature of the wisdom that comes through. And others are saying, Brenda was hearing from so many celebrities this morning who she's either brought through earlier or those who are looking to her for the wisdom that she brings through, because she's honoring some of the most notorious people in the vision of they are souls who were once here upon this plane, and they gave us something to either reach for or something to look to vibrate away from. And that is what we're talking about. Brenda has some souls who say she's in the vision of I love everybody, but I don't always want to be friends with everybody. Okay, there's a big difference. I can bring through your loving soul wisdom, of course, whether or not you're portrayed as evil on this plane or not, because Brenda has dealt with that vision with others around her, and it isn't a pleasant place to be. So that's why some people will say, well, I've let go of friends or family members or acquaintances who keep putting that label on me, thinking that just because I'm able to bring through the source of soul that guides them to a higher level of love for who they are on this plane, that it's a joyful picnic, perhaps, right? It's no picnic sometimes knowing that I have to elevate myself enough that my own soul vibrates with me and says, you've always got your back covered, honey. That's the nature of what my soul would say to me and how it would be said, okay? Now, when people say, that sounds illustrious, some of the time my soul will elevate the conversation a little bit and be more formal in tone and more serious in its application of who we are as souls and how we got to be. But this is where many are in their hearts, saying, I was hurt as a child and now I'm portraying myself as a victim on this plane. And those around us who are saying, all you have to do is lift yourself up by your bootstraps. It's a very limited vision. And Brenda denies that vision for many, because she says, it's so easy for us to claim we're of the light or whatnot, that we then start to label others dark or the grays of the world, right? Brenda would be labeled a gray because she doesn't vibrate in the exuberance of one field or another. I can skip sessions with somebody and still be able to attract their hearts, okay? So basically what it means is that just because I'm not flying high in my mind and elevated, others will say that when they're getting high. Okay, but Brenda doesn't do that vision artificially. She's very much in the idea of my frequency band or my vibration. And it is true, because when she is with her soul, as always, she is humming. And that means you get the feeling of the energy in your heart. Most often, that's the best place to feel it. But this can be those ideas that sometimes she felt like she was leaving others behind, but in essence, they were there cheering her on or hoping for a different outcome. That's where she was with certain souls, hoping for different outcomes for them and their families, hoping that they could see the beauty of who they were in their moments of despair, hoping that they could see the moments as something that we can learn from and live by. Okay, freedom rings for all of us at some point in time, but if we can garner enough strength, wisdom, and dignity, we can do so here as well. But what it takes is for those souls who are not garnering the experiences that they want, we would say, what is it that's coming through and why? Okay, and sometimes those souls say it sucks to be bringing through those lower aspects of who you are or were from a soul level. It can hurt. And others are saying this isn't about you bringing forth your own soul. It can be about the pain of discovery of what's to come and who's going to be leaving this plane or who is going to be leaving my vibration. And that means that it could be the idea that George Jones, he said she was a loving, caring soul, and then she turned to the devil with her family's friend, right? The friends and family that believe that that's the way to be? Or is it that they're trying to avoid the very thing that they're focusing on in their hearts? That's the nature of what Brenda was dealing with. The reality of how we do what we do is we focus on the things that make us feel good, not the things that we're afraid of. Brenda has to step into the fear and say, okay, here we go. What's this telling me? What's this showing me? I'm afraid of sharks, but I'm not going to go swim with them. Let's put it that way, okay? Not little sharks or anything like that, but that's just the nature of it. And then I got told, Brenda, you're becoming more like the sharks than what you think. Because in essence, I'm not here to baby the souls that are ready to hear the truth of what's going on and why. Okay? I'm not here to tell people that everything is perfect all the time, but it is in its vision from a soul level. And that's what is so incredibly hard for so many to hear. Because it doesn't mean that we don't do anything or we don't help others or we just let them be, but it could be that kind of vision. Sometimes I overmother the population at large, is what my soul will say. I'm like the mother to the souls. I caretake their hearts and their minds most often because I understand enough about the sociology and psychology of the moment to see how many people are being labeled various things based on certain moments or places in time in history. And it's not fair when Brenda says, at what point do people start pointing their fingers at people and saying, you should have it all figured out by now? Like at 18, everyone's supposed to be the most wise souls ever and not make a single misstep in this world, correct? How many want to go through that level of understanding versus someone like Brenda who says, I already know that in essence, the judgment part of our brain, which is our frontal lobe, is responsible for a lot of those missteps. And that part of our brain isn't even fully developed until our mid to late 20s for most of us. What does that tell you about the experimentation that many are doing in their mid to early 20s? It can be a time of missteps as well. And we honor that vision as part of growing up. But it doesn't mean we throw away the keys. I work with prisoners in my mind. I know people who have gone to prison and have turned out to be very, very wise and soulful civilians of this plane. Okay? So when people start to see the love that she honors for everybody, even those who are wiser here than they were at one point in time, this is where we garner our experiences for love of life. Okay? And that's why sometimes when we're in this idea that I'm bringing through the pain and suffering of certain souls, that's true. That was where George Jones was in essence. He was in the pain and suffering moment. In that moment that he came through, and then he retracted his statements about love and said, oh, I don't think she's all that and more. It's because of where I was in my own moment with my own family and friends. I was starting to disconnect from the heart-centered soul that I am, truly, into the mindset of my INFJ preferences that I often clue into when I feel like I need to be stronger than someone else's mind, perhaps. It's a soul level understanding of that kind of wisdom. It's the preferences of my brain, okay? And so others who know her will know, I'll be very honest. When I go to that vision, most often there would be some kind of vulnerability I'm about to face. And so I get ready to, it's like latch and load. I lock down the doors and I say I'm not letting anybody else in, right? George Jones is the strength of his soul. He's it's like a country hero and a victim of the world in which he vibrated, right? That's how he was portraying himself at one point, because that's where, in essence, I was looking to others as they were the right ones, or they were the ones that were the victims, right? We do this often in our relationships, and it does happen within the nature of partnerships, spouses, and whatnot, where someone is saying the women are often the ones causing a lot of the problems as well. So it's not always about saying the men are to be demeaned in this world. We're talking about the nature of relating to anybody. That's not easy. And when Brenda says, oh, I can do it, and I feel sorry for people. But they want you to feel empowered for who you are, and you rise above the compassion and you say, sometimes we need to, lay our foot down and say, it's time for us to get serious. Okay? I can bring forth the future for many souls. I can also hear the footsteps upon the plane of love of life. That's where I go most often with my soul. My soul loves me, adores me, cherishes me, and hands me my hat sometimes, right? And says, adios, right? No, this is how we work our way up to the nature of vibrating with our highest vision, right? Brenda will tell you there are different vibrations that our soul will reach for with her as a guide. She's felt the vibration of a Jesus type vibration. It was his soul's love vibration. And then there was the idea of an angel vision that she felt, which was absolutely probably one of the highest visions that she could possibly reach at that moment that she was in it. Okay? And she's like, I would not be able to walk around this plane feeling like that. I don't see anybody else really doing it. Let's put it that way. Because you are like, there's nothing like it, right? We're not talking about the nature of the ego. We're talking about a vibrational being here, and this is who you are. And so sometimes it's hard when you know what those vibrations are to then not want to chase those vibrations and say, but that felt so good. It was so wise and so caring and so heart-centered. There was no bad in my heart with that vibration. That's what it's like for us when we go to the next level of love for who we are. We're not demonized for who we are. We're here to create with others in very many ways, and there are souls that are having a more difficult time than others. Brenda was crying for the children on this plane who are locked in with others who are hurting them. That's a nature of vulnerability for her, right? Because then she vibrates in the victimhood of those souls, and she doesn't want to do that. She was asking for our souls to look into the hearts and minds of those who are hurting others and say, can't you just wake them up a little bit? Can't you just give their souls a little nudge into a direction that is about breaking those patterns of abuse? When we ourselves have partaken in those visions, rose above them, kindly said, I don't need to create from that vibration, and then was able to do what many would want to do, which is align with the highest vision of who they are, and say, I love who I am for who I am, versus the nature of, I love who we are together. This is when you go to your own soul, and that vision fits like a glove. And it feels beautiful and wise, cunningness is where she is in some ways, with her ideas of how to align with people who love who they are as well. And when she says that, she knows that it's the nature of actually feeling it rather than just knowing it in the mind. And this is why manifesting is of mindset, soul is of soul. It's a full-bodied expression of love of all of us. And when we do that vision well, it can be seen and heard around the world. That's where people are. They're starting to vibrate in the beauty of who they are as souls. Authentically being is where Brenda is at. She would rather be with people who are of the criminal mindset at one point in time, but are authentically being who they are, than those who are pasting a smile upon their face when they don't feel like it, and pretending like everything is just hunky-dory. Okay, or that they are the highest of the high when they know that they have their own issues in their lives, and they're saying, I can guide you to a better place of love for who you are. I already know you love who you are. That's why she loves people who are authentically in their vibration and saying, I love who I am. Now, many of us who are trying to convince others of that will often overcompensate. This is what I say. I say they're overcompensating for that vision. We have to be honest with this process, and that it's not always easy, and that it can suck to know the things about people or wisdom or vulnerabilities about people around us, because it means that we're being real. Okay? And our hearts are there with you, and we can guide you, and we love you. Okay? And that's the hard part, is sometimes we have to set aside our compassion, especially if we're overly compassionate, right? You would be surprised. This is the idea of those who are saying they're empathic or they are empaths and whatnot. And Brenda knows how to do enough of the disconnect from her vision as a soul on this plane to let those souls come in and say, I vibrated out of it very fast as a victim with her heart. That's where souls will go, because they know that it's not going to serve them for the most part unless they are in that idea that they're going to isolate, or they've done enough soul searching that they can say, I can honestly say I have compassion for all these people that I'm coming upon. And I mean compassion, saying I can understand why you are the way that you are. I'm not going to try to feel like you, right? That's where most people are coming from, though, is the compassion, right? That is the nature of what many souls are saying. They're feeling the vibrations of others as less than. Brenda is saying, I give them everything I would ever give myself. That's how I am with the public at large. Anything I would want for myself, I would grant to anybody else. It's very simple, but it's also very struggled sometimes in the hearts of many. They wouldn't want that for people who've hurt people. Brenda's like, I see changes afoot in my mind already with people who are on the screen cheering us on. Okay, because they themselves would want that same grace handed to them if they themselves were going through the missteps of their own soul's expression. This is what can happen sometimes. Okay, Brenda's had her own missteps in this world. She would be very vulnerable in telling you about her own arguing with her own soul sometimes about some of the wisdom that gets brought through. So why are you doing that? Why are you focusing on that lower level of love is where Brenda sometimes goes. It's a base feeling of desire is what some would say. And then she realizes desire is what motivated me to do this work in the first place. Why would I deny the desire to help other people? Should I shut that vision down for good? These are some of the old spiritual enlightenment ideas, right? And some of us are meant to come in here and to guide others. And the thing is this a natural desire to want to help people? Brenda's been doing it her whole life. She can't even help it. Okay, and that's why sometimes her needs were not being met, because she was so forthcoming with other people's wisdom that they thought, why isn't she taking this on the road? Because I have children. I have a life that I need to live here. I'm not here to also vibrate outside of this plane for good. That means going to the other side of the veil permanently and leaving this form. I'm not going to do that either. Okay? That's why we bring our own souls out. We don't have to come down from anything. We're beautiful. The vision of the light is also about the genetics in our body and what we're doing with it. And sometimes when we don't feel like we're aligning with the best part of ourselves, we can start to give ourselves those messages that don't feel good either. Brenda will hear the future for her body and for her soul. And she'll hear the future of other souls who love her that don't like her at this moment as well. Okay? And that can be a hard thing to go, I have this disagreement with someone and I want them to be able to see the beauty of who they are, but I myself am limited in how much angst I'm willing to take on. I have to deal with people around me who are in that idea of angst. Okay? And so that kind of vision can kind of, it's like temper my mood. Okay? Someone's temper can rub off on me the wrong way sometimes. Those are those kinds of feelings I've been dealing with. How much do I really get affected by other people's sources of wisdom? Because they're being who they are. And they have a right to be angry a lot of times. Other times Brenda says, oh, I'll let you know when it's necessary. There's a lot of unnecessary anger in this world. And I mean unnecessary. It's all beautiful and loving and kind. But there are always other ways we can utilize it, deal with it, or come to an idea of how to come together instead of breaking our bridges apart and then collapsing the whole system whatsoever. Okay, so this is why Brenda herself is like, oh, I want to learn more about conflict resolution, because in my mind, I've always been more of a peacemaker, but I'm not always the best at making the peace agreements. Does that make sense? Okay, because there's a part of me that's like, I'm not going to take the low end of what is always being offered as my share of the pie. Let's put it that way. That's why Brenda was like, there are so many souls who are like, oh, I'm here to bargain with you about your price. And Brenda said, she's like, I will go to the soul and I will say, what is it that they can or cannot afford? So if I have a price, for instance, on my product, this is giving you a highlight of something that's coming. So if I have a product and someone cannot afford it, their soul will let me know, and they'll let me know what is a fair price for them. If there's someone who can't afford anything, I can set up certain ideas, but I cannot be here to just give out free advice willy-nilly for everyone and anyone at all times. There will always be souls that I will caretake in my heart who need a helping hand. Those souls will step forward and they will be the ones to get that kind of charity handed to them. Everyone else who has that vision of, I am coming willfully to see this woman and to show her the gratitude for what she has done for who I am and who my soulmate is. Brenda is with a soul who is of higher level love. She won't reveal his source because in essence, they are in tandem with each other's vision. In tandem. But they're not on the soul level with each other as of yet. They still feel each other's vibrations. They still hear each other's words of wisdom. But they're not uniting on the soul level in the same way that they used to. Because in essence, Brenda is more of the goody two-shoes kind of vision. Rather than the, I'm going to take down everybody who isn't in alignment with the way that I think the world should be. Okay? That's the nature of the conflict that she's working through on a soul level with someone that she actually really does care about, and she can see the beauty of their vision. She's just more, I can't do that vision in my mind because it hurts too much. I'm not one to sit there and start labeling people negative names for the most part, because I look at people's children and I know what the damage is that can happen with children who grow up being labeled X, Y, or Z. And often we are still playing out those scripts and trying to compensate for the things that people weren't able to keep us in that highest wisdom and grace as children. And so we're still trying to reach that with so many souls. And that's why Brenda wins that war against drugs, right? She's not against drugs. She's just more about natural inhibitors of pain. So her soul brings her the wisdom of she no longer has back pain. When her soul allows her to feel it, it's because they let her know this is going to hurt you a little bit more down the road if you don't get something looked at or taken care of or go get a massage regularly, something like that. Okay? And that's that kind of understanding that when someone says, well, this doesn't sound like it sucks, there are examples of sacrifices that I've had to make that others wouldn't want to make. Okay? And that includes self-esteem at some point. I lost my self-esteem at some point, and I had to bring myself back into the vision of it based on that idea of some of the stuff that I was telling myself, what I was dealing with, whatnot. And this is why your soul will always say, I love you for who you are. But when you go out and start vibrating with others, that's when it can be hard in this plane. Because people are very quick to judge others based on how we, perceive and create our forms, because we create this. Okay? And that's why it's a thing of beauty for all of us on this plane. Don't ever tell another soul that they're not beautiful in form. I can guarantee you that. Okay? So with that in mind, I want everyone to feel the beauty of who they are and feel the wisdom that they are actually bringing to this world, because everything that we do is an aspect of who we are, and it is ingrained in us that it's wisdom coming through. We just might not agree with that level of understanding of what the wisdom might be granting us. It could be highlighting aspects of who we are or aspects that we're denying about ourselves, okay? Or even just those ideas of I'm learning through the lens of another soul, okay? So with that, I want to say thank you for watching, and as always, stay curious, wise, and soulful. Have a wonderful day.